This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Eric, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Sales and marketing, obviously for a long time they were separate territories and really didn't collaborate all that much. Then gradually they became more and more of a team effort, if you will, if not solely working out both together. But certainly with things like data and analytics and high-speed connectivity and clouds and apps and all of the things that are happening, sales and marketing and IT now are beginning to evolve over time. Let's go into a little bit about that. I know a lot of our listeners are living that particular situation, but having an opportunity to speak with someone that's more or less down in the trenches and where things are happening, let's take a look at the relationship between sales and marketing and IT, and over time, where do you see it going?
Well, certainly the role of sales and marketing technology has evolved significantly over time. When I started Sagepath in 2002, a lot of times we were the glue between sales and marketing and IT organizations. Since then, there's been a lot more collaboration that exists within companies across organizations. Yet still, there's quite a chasm that often exists between even sales and marketing and certainly with IT. Even within sales and marketing, there's many different roles between digital marketing and advertising and business intelligence and marketing automation, and the list goes on. And a lot of times there's separate resources that manage each of these tasks independently at companies, so it becomes very challenging to drive a single consistent view of the customer. In addition, in many cases, companies have a large number of different technologies that support these tasks. So we've been working with a lot of clients to design and develop digital marketing platforms upon which sales and marketing have one single view of the customer that can leverage a common set of technologies across the company. This marketing platform is tailored to individual needs of a customer. So we look to tailor for specific needs and demands. And in many cases, it will leverage best-of-breed technologies. So the digital marketing platform often consists of CRM, marketing automation, content management, analytics, e-commerce as a foundation of the platform. And then the difference is then you layer on top of that the strategies that are unique and customized to a company, which becomes the business model foundation for that technology framework. And then the user interface that is the visual presentation of that strategy, along with APIs that integrate these different technologies. And that's the benefit associated with such technologies for companies. And that helps to streamline integration and time to market and increase quality and ultimately sales for companies.
You know, obviously, like almost anything, if you're really doing it and you've done it for many years and you're really good at it, it's almost, you know, I'm thinking of a Eastern philosophy that says the solution is simple. It's the implementation that becomes a challenge. You know, I guess where I'm headed is that all of the things that you're talking about are individual functions at one point, sort of like an ERP type thing, and now it's a case where you've got this interrelationship and integration between all of these capabilities, making a seamless platform as you're describing. I guess one of the questions, and one of the things I want to take a look at is the explosive growth of data and data-driven decisions. But before we go there, how about the culture of acceptance of those kind of things? I mean, certainly within an organization, beyond the decision makers at the very top, you've got the worker bees, if you will, that probably are having to deal with something new or something different almost every week, every month, it seems. I guess where I'm headed is the innovation and the opportunity to create such effective and efficient type technologies is one thing. How about the embracing of it? Are you seeing a resistance, or are you seeing people that are obviously passionate about trying to get ahead and be competitive?
Well, I think we see a little bit of both, and then certainly in companies that are forward-thinking and innovative, there's more of the perspective on embracing innovation and embracing growth. But a lot of companies, especially as they get bigger, there's more of that mindset of staying in the moment and staying with the existing processes. So I think that's one of the challenges that bigger companies face, is that ability to think innovatively and think about new technology to help drive their business forward.
Now, there's not a technology that exists anymore that doesn't understand and have a capability of capturing some form of data, whether it's specific demographic profiling or habits. They talk about predictive and prescriptive now analytics. I mean, there's so much information, so much data. Certainly the challenge is what to do with it, but then on top of that, how do you make sense out of it? So let's go into the next, I think, probably most difficult challenge in terms of the evolution of what I'll call the disruptive economy anymore, because it just seems like that word is maybe a bit cliche, but it really doesn't even describe any individual technology anymore. I think it describes the entire ecosystem. So I guess what I'm asking is in that type of environment, how do companies make sense of the explosive growth of data and data-driven decisions?
So we've seen a lot of companies invest significant amount of money and time in data. And in many cases, these companies are collecting and analyzing almost too much data, and it's difficult for them to sift through data efficiently and prioritize what they're getting out of the data. In many cases, they have too many metrics and measures with no ability to define the fundamental goals and business drivers. We've been with companies that have 15 to 20 different major metrics that they're tracking towards. Mm. And in those cases, that's too many, right? I mean, I've always been taught and thought that 3 to 5 core metrics, and ideally 1, is the best way to go, right? So that there's a focus on that, right? And this lack of focus makes for a horribly inefficient impact on business resources and planning. Ultimately, I think by distilling data into consumable and more focused information, it's much easier to tell a more streamlined story to then customer, ultimately. So I'll give you one example. We worked with the client on developing a human capital dashboard. So the dashboard allowed the company to find out what resources the company had, what their skill sets were, where they are located, what level the resources were at a global level, and then also not only internally but also externally look at that partner ecosystem. So it has a number of different applications ranging from talent assessment to acquisition to organizational planning to sales enablement and partnering and acquisition planning. And I think that's absolutely vital to think about data very specifically and drive strat planning and marketing planning around that focused vision for the data.
Well, again, from an outsider, one of the things that we talk about here is that we come almost as a tourist because we cover every one of the verticals. And as we discuss, whether it's fintech or internet security or CRM, now Internet of Things, and so much that's going on, you begin to realize in a lot of cases it's the same thing, only different. But in that difference becomes the challenge. In that difference becomes the nuance. And I guess where I'm going now is I'm still kind of driving into that, mining a little bit into the point where how does, I remember one time hearing a comment by Steve Jobs saying something like, people don't know what they want till they see it. And he was talking about consumers. But I think in this case what I'm talking about is when you're running an enterprise, when you're a first-generation entrepreneur or a top executive at dealing with an industry, how do you even know there's an opportunity out there to improve yourself? Do you constantly look? How do you stay on top of what's next? Or do you bring in someone like you guys and have a trusted partner that you assume brings that information to the discussion?
Well, I think there's a little bit of both, right? I mean, I'm big advocates that a company better know their strategy better than anybody else. And certainly a company like ours can help supplement that strategy. But if we're driving that strategy, or if any outsider is driving that strategy, then that company may cease to exist.
I was going to say it's got other problems besides.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is that with technology changing so much, obviously it's impacting the way companies are doing business, and so tail wagging dog wagging tail. I mean, that's the part I'm going. I mean, I can appreciate the point that you're making that obviously they better have their act together and know what their kind of game plan is or their strategy. But in this case, I guess what I'm asking is what happens when you can't stay on. Your lifeblood, I'm guessing, is staying on top of change and constantly evolving. In fact, helping to create some of the changes that are out in the rainforest, if you will, as far as competition in the marketplace is concerned. But if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business leader, how do I do that? And so I guess my point being is and I'll pose it from this perspective, and that is tail dog. Which one's changing which? Is business driving technology, or is technology driving the change in business?
Well, I think there's a little bit
of both.
Certainly, absolutely, because the business has to drive the innovation. The technology is the enabler that makes that innovation occur, right? So from our perspective, technology creates new business models and radically transforms existing business models. And there are still companies that have only begun to leverage technology, right? So we see many companies that are still caught up in the traditional way of doing things, and these companies will become obsolete, right? And instead, we're trying to encourage our clients to think more critically and more innovatively, like you said, encourage clients to change things up for their employees, because companies are only as good as their employees and what the employees are thinking. So it's imperative for companies and their employees to get outside their comfort zone. It's only when you get outside that comfort zone that you can achieve breakthrough thinking and breakthrough change, right? So with technology changing so rapidly right now, we're often technology advisors for our clients to give them a perspective of the changing technology landscape. We've implemented a lot of innovation forums for clients where many clients come on board on a quarterly or annual basis to keep them plugged in on what's going on in all things technology and innovation. And I think that perspective of the client's perspective on strategy along with our perspective on technology is a great blend of what you're talking about, because I think you need both, right? You need that perspective on strategy, and you need that perspective on how technology can enable that strategy.
I think that's a strong service, and as much as any solution would be. Trust does, when you're really dealing in the unknown, and there's so much new and so much different. I mean, a lot of times when we have an opportunity to talk to a subject matter expert, the perception is from one side, and a lot of times you think to yourself, okay, well, go on that other side and be the person behind the desk that has to deal with, you mentioned earlier about so much data. In fact, there's too much data, and you need to trim it down. I would submit that almost the same issue happens with technology. There's so much confronting a decision maker anymore that you really do have to kind of, I guess as you're pointing out, use your strategy as much as anything to self-determine what it is you're looking for. But having something like the forums or the discussion platforms that you're talking about, I would think that would be unbelievably invaluable in terms of making those kind of decisions. Let's talk for a little bit about the market as it relates to the consumer. And certainly over the period of time, it's getting more and more so tilted to the millenniums as far as being a lot of the decision makers. And I guess you'd almost argue they're kind of native to the environment that we're talking about. They're more likely to be dealing with technology and technology platforms than, say, the baby boomer generation might have been. Obviously, the role of technology in reaching millenniums is got to be absolutely crucial. Give our listeners some insight from your perspective. How do you see the role of technology in reaching millenniums?
So reaching the millennials is really the holy grail of a lot of these B2C business-to-consumer customers that we work with. Every consumer-driven business is focused on building that long-standing relationship with millennials. And it's not just about creating a new marketing campaign. It's about building an authentic, trustworthy relationship with millennials. We've seen a lot of loyalty campaigns come and go, but traditional loyalty techniques are no longer sufficient, right? Yeah. Instead, right now, we've got to focus on more innovative solutions that in many cases leverage technology and have, those technology-driven solutions have a much greater appeal among the millennials. So, for example, if you look at the Dollar Shave Club, it's completely disrupted the shaving market. The concept is built on the idea that shavers don't have to be expensive, or that shavers can be shipped directly to the consumer on a routine schedule. So that type of thinking where you're leveraging technology to reach the millennials is, in my mind, critical to achieve the next disruptive solution in the market.
Well, and it's a good point. Trust becomes an interesting word. It's sort of like, what does "is" mean, or because where I'm going is like take for example FinTech and the whole disruption that's happening in the payments marketplace. And one of the things that you hear a lot about in that discussion is that banks are more secure. They're going to keep your money safe, and there's less risk, quote unquote. And you have to wonder, obviously millenniums don't want to put their money at risk, but I think their trust relationship to a technology and to a virtual type of transaction, if you will, doesn't require the marble deposit stand. I'm trying to think of the last time I was in a bank to try to remember what they were called, but where you would come up to a teller and actually make a deposit is in a way is helping you to feel confident and secure that your money's okay, because look at the big building and that kind of thing. And when you're dealing in a virtual environment, especially when it is enough advanced technology that allows for the automation and the simplicity of doing something like that, I'm going to guess trust becomes an absolutely crucial factor, and as you point out, building that over an extended period of time. It's going to be interesting to see how that issue evolves and how that market continues to drive some of the traditional values, I guess, for lack of a better description, of what we would call a currency exchange and enterprise and actually the actual capital market of buying and selling. Before we leave the discussion, and we're quickly running out of time, let's talk a little bit about technology covering a lot of different bases, Eric. Let's talk about it as it's influencing the career path for this next generation. Maybe go into a little bit of insight about that. Technology helping to influence the career path for the upcoming millennials or the next generation.
So this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, Frank. There's more money being invested in helping our youth grow to reach their potential than ever before. Yet the results have been mixed at best. It requires more money than ever and requires more time than ever to make a difference with our youth. But more so than anything, it requires a plan to change the mindset of our youth, to give them the self-confidence to make a difference in themselves and in others. It requires a whole new approach of thinking to impact this next generation. We're currently working with the Congressional Medal of Honor Foundation to develop a program to target kids directly to make a difference in their community. It's going to be a nationwide program, and it's the program and effort that I'm most proud of here at Sagepath in all my years. And it's a program that will focus on helping kids develop self-confidence and providing them with individualized life plans through technology and other opportunities. And we'll be partnering with corporations and community partners, schools, and programs in establishing and measuring metrics such as school dropout rate, high school graduation rate, and employment rates to measure impact on society.
I'm amazed, Eric. It's like, wow. One of the things, my immediate reaction is that one of the struggles that anything that happens in innovation is a lot of times it happens in a silo, and there's not enough discussion or collaboration in terms of working with other people who have maybe different passions or maybe even the same passion, but approaching it from a different perspective. Part of where I'm going is that that sounds absolutely phenomenal, and I'm hoping some of our listeners, and in fact I'm going to ask where they might find more information, how they can support or help or even participate in what you're doing. But I'm thinking about the entire STEM initiative, and I'm thinking about the outreach as it relates to even technology in high schools and getting involved in creative things like robotics and other aspects that are trying to get involved in science, technology, engineering, and math. And I would think that there's an awful lot of synergy between what you're doing and what a lot of other organizations are trying to do from their particular perspective with helping in that same way to create and certainly a purpose-driven situation the way you're describing brings a sense of adulation that goes beyond just mere accomplishment or even financial success. It's actually doing good, and when you get the combination of both of those things, that's pretty impressive. I'd love to learn more about it. In fact, I'm going to ask you to come back and let's talk specifically about that particular program, because that sounds really exciting, and I'd like to learn more, and I know our listeners would like to learn more. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and Eric, I just want to thank you so much for taking a few minutes to go over a couple of issues and give us some insights, and for joining us today on Tech Talk.
Thanks for having me, Frank.